525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? That song has been going through my head. You remember that song from Rent, Measure? Uh, I don't even remember what it's called. What's that song called, Kai? Seasons of Love. Seasons of Love. Song has been, thank you, Deb and Ellen, Leowana. 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a year? That song has been on my mind as we have creeped past 525,600 deaths in this country alone from COVID alone in this past year alone. This week, or maybe it was last week. One death a minute, maybe more than one death a minute in our country due to this disease. So many deaths in the lives of people here on this Zoom worship service today. And that doesn't even cover all of the deaths that have happened in hospital rooms and nursing homes that have taken place alone or taken place without the full surround of loving people that every person who is dying deserves. Do you measure a year by the memorial services delayed until we can be together and do it right? Do you measure a year by the massive increases in gun violence that have taken place in this city and many cities around the country? Or the delayed healthcare and untreated illnesses due to fear of COVID or loss of income that will likely cause more deaths down the road? It's been 1 year since this congregation canceled our in-person service and replaced it with this virtual format. It's been a year unlike any other. And we measure it by days spent alone or days spent out of school or by days since we have traveled beyond our own neighborhoods. We measure it by how close we are to returning to normal or by vaccination rates or by those who've recovered from this disease. We measure it by deaths and by tollings of bells. The poem that Carrie read for us early, For Whom the Bell Tolls, was published by John Donne in 1624 in his Devotions upon Emergent Occasions. Many people know the phrase "For Whom the Bell Tolls" as the title of the Ernest Hemingway book, or some know it as a Metallica song. Traditionally, back in the day, back in John Donne's day, the church bells would be tolled, which was a way of telling. The word toll comes from the word tell. The church bells would tell that a death was happening. They would be rung mournfully rather than pealed in celebration of a wedding, for example. For several stages of a death in a community, they would be told once upon the approach of a death, which is the specific toll that Donne was reflecting on, I think. Send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee, because you might be so sick that you don't realize that the bell that you hear that is marking an approaching death is your own approaching death. Donne wrote these poems while he was deathly ill in bed and was listening for the toll that marked that he was about to die. They told upon the approach of death immediately after a death happened, and then as the funeral procession approached the church. 3 tolls. But as John Donne lay in his bed, deathly ill, writing his devotions, he became clear that his interconnectedness to all others was paramount, was most important to him. And that even if the bell that he hears is being tolled for someone else and not for his own, it is still tolling for him as well. No one is an island, Carrie read, entire of itself. Each piece of it is the continent, a part of the main. Each person's death diminishes me, for I am involved in humankind. Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. We are as interconnected now as we were in 1624, probably even more so. And each death that has happened this year has diminished us. We have all died a bit this year. Our lives are all a bit more empty, a bit more hollow after this year of the pandemic, and some of us more than others. We are all more hollow after a year of this pandemic. But here is what physics tells me about hollowness. And I've preached about this before, but it's ringing for me on this anniversary, so I want to share it again. In a bell or in a singing bowl, like I have a few singing bowls here, singing bowl. The hollow, so the space in the middle, is what amplifies the ring's resonance. Without the hollow, if you rang a singing bowl, you just get a metallic thunk that would then rapidly die away. When you have a hollow, however, it allows the ring of the struck singing bowl to dance back and forth across its inner emptiness, picking up the echoey depth of tone and then bursting forth into the world beyond. The bowl's hollow amplifies its resonance. And the larger the hollow, the louder it resounds when it's struck. So I want to take a minute to ring two different sized singing bowls so you can hear what that sounds like, what this hollow sounds like. And then another hollow, a bigger hollow. The hollow amplifies the resonance. So might the gift of the hollowness that is created in us when we lose something precious be that the very hollowness itself could amplify the resonance in our own lives. When something strikes us when we are feeling hollow, might its meaning have more room to dance in us than if we were full? Might it pick up more speed and complexity and depth when we are hollow? Might it eventually burst forth from us into the world with a resounding peal or a heart-opening toll? Because when we are full, when our days and our hearts and our minds are cluttered with bustling activity, the way I experienced much of my life before the pandemic, or when we give up and when we let ourselves collapse inward rather than opening up, there's no space for that deep resonance. When something strikes us and we have not made space within ourselves or within our lives, it often only makes a little short-lived thunk, right? The frenetic activity, the busyness of our lives that we often allow ourselves to fall into absorbs that resonance without slowing down. And sometimes the opportunity for beautiful transformation is dampened or lost entirely. We are all more hollow after this year of the pandemic, but there is sometimes a gift in the hollowness of loss. Another way to look at this is through those words of Leonard Cohen's that Chase sang for us earlier. Ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. The hollowness of loss can amplify the resonance of that which strikes us most. Or nothing is perfectly whole. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. When we speak of this year for generations to come, we will speak of this pandemic. We will speak of this disease that is harmful but not deadly to about 98% of us and deadly to 2% of us. We will speak of the ways that we shut down life of the 98% to protect the 2%. We will speak of the record speed with which our scientists developed a vaccine, or many vaccines. And we will speak of the ways that we failed as well, the ways we failed to prioritize the common good in favor of our own desires. We will speak of the ways that the disease hit those who were already oppressed the hardest. We will speak of the pandemic when we speak of this year. But we will also speak of the uprising of this year, right? The police murder of George Floyd and how not only the Black community in the Twin Cities noticed that murder and rose up, but a huge number of people of all races in the Twin Cities noticed and rose up. And then in other cities and states and around the world, to where Black Lives Matter signs are scrawled in the windows of rural white parts of the country. And demonstrations shut down major highways in major cities, and there were chants of no justice, no peace by small knots of people on tiny town greens. An uprising that happened that was so large and so visible and so forceful that long delayed change began to happen. School boards ended security contracts with police departments and began asking how else they might create a safe environment for their students. City councils finally began to take action on bills that hold the police departments accountable for serving and protecting the people. Bills that ended stop and frisk. Voters finally passed referendums that called for greater investment in mental health services and schools and economic justice rather than just investing in weapons and police departments. An uprising happened this year that kept pressure up to count every vote this fall, when there were some who sought to throw away Black and brown votes from cities that didn't support the outcomes that they wanted. And I'll tell you that after joining those masses of people on the streets of Philadelphia this summer and this fall, I believe the pandemic may have created that necessary crack in the American way of life that let life-giving light in. Excuse me. I don't give thanks for the pandemic, but I think it might have created an important crack in our world, particularly probably for the white middle-class people in the United States. Because as long as people like that, people like me, are able to stay relatively comfortable in a busy white middle-class existence, it's been hard for that awakening light to penetrate down to us. And under the muffled and limited experience of stay-at-home orders and the fear of a disease that moves through breath, the ragged cry of "I can't breathe" from a Black man with a white man's knee at his neck, made it through to many people for the first time. And as one person after another rose up to say, this is wrong, this must change, as one person after another put their bodies in the streets and their ballots in the boxes and their voices out into the void, the cracks grew wider and more light began to pour in. This year, as our hollowness grew, that which struck us rang more resonantly, more loudly, and more fiercely through our beings. This year, the pandemic created a hairline crack in the comfort of U.S. existence, which grew to a fissure and then a chasm. And we began to awaken to a new light pouring down on us, awaken to the need for racial justice in a new way, awaken to each of us finding our part to play in bringing that justice about. Last year, when we gathered virtually for the first time, I preached a sermon called Wherever You Go, There You Are. These words that have been attributed to Confucius or maybe Buddha or maybe Yogi Berra. Wherever you go, there you are. In other words, if you're sad where you are now, if you go somewhere else, you might be sad there. If you don't love yourself here, you're not going to love yourself there. If you can't be present to the life you have, you can't be present to the life you dream about either. In other words, if you want change in your life, it has to start from within. And we have been stuck with ourselves and with those closest to us more than perhaps ever before this year, right? We've been spending a year with almost no chance of running away from ourselves and our problems. And last year I said that we were going to be stuck with the hardest parts of ourselves, thinking that this was just for 2 weeks. It felt like a big deal even when it was just going to be for 2 weeks. That we were going to be stuck with ourselves, with the hardest parts of ourselves, our ADHD selves, our anxious selves, the parts of ourselves that we don't like, the habits of those closest to us that get on our last nerve. But that we would also be stuck with the best in ourselves. And this year we have reached out to help each other with groceries and with tech support, whatever support we could offer safely in a dangerous time to one another. We found ways to connect amidst deafening loneliness and across aching distance. We have awakened anew to the cry for justice in our world, and we've found new ways to answer that cry. We've discovered new chords of resilience in our souls. And we have felt that which matters most in our lives, our loved ones, our connection, our community, our care, our generosity. We have felt that which matters most in our lives resonate more deeply and fully than maybe ever before. Wherever we go, there we are. Wherever we are stuck, here we are. The things that have driven us nuts about being stuck with ourselves have been with us for a year. And the absolute best that is in us has been here too. We have stayed human together this year. So how do we measure this year? We measure it in loss, yes. In hollowness, yes. In tolling of bells, yes. In shattered experiences, yes. But my friends, may we also measure this year in the depth of resonance by all that has struck us in this time. May we measure this year by the new light pouring in on us through the cracks of that which has fallen apart. May we measure this year by the best that has been in us, that has stayed with us in every moment, and that will never let us go. May it be so, and amen.
Hi, I'm Reverend Hannah Capaldi.
And I'm Reverend Abbey Tennis. We are the ministers at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, where our mission is to awaken love and justice in our lives and in the world.
We're so grateful that you watched, and we hope that the sermon connected with your soul.
We also want to invite you to join us for a live worship service every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can always find the link to that service on our website at www.philauu.org. In these services, you'll hear words like you've just heard, and you also get a chance to greet one another, pray together, sing together, and we even hold a virtual coffee hour after services to get a chance to greet some new and old friends.
If you want to support the mission of this community and you feel moved to give, you can do so by going to the website that Reverend Abbey just mentioned. You can find that link below, or you can text 215-709-5095 and follow the prompts to give.
If someone in your life needs to hear these words today, we encourage you to share this video. And again, thank you so much for watching.
We hope to see you soon.